Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our next lesson. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to import layered Photoshop and Illustrator files into Adobe After Effects. So we're going to dive right into this, and the importance of importing layered files will obviously allow you depth and the ability to have, again, that parallax aspect to your motion design. So we're going to dive right in with Adobe Photoshop. And here I want to kind of go over the file I have set up for you all. And here you can see I have a background, I have some clouds, I have some stars, some shooting stars. I also have a ship that I went ahead and kind of paired with its little plume of smoke behind it. And if you see, if I open this up, you have the blast and the rocket and all that good stuff. And that's in its own group, which is going to be really important to see how that comes into Photoshop. We're also going to add a couple other things. Let's go ahead and add a drop shadow. So I'm going to do FX drop shadow. And let's go ahead, and orange may not be the best color, so let's hop in and grab some purple and darken it just a little, and then let's obviously pull that down a little bit and maybe soften it as well, just to get a nice kind of soft feeling. Now this is just to show you that you can bring in layer styles to your individual kind of layers, and they will transfer over to Photoshop and After Effects. So I'm going to go ahead and save that file. And let's go ahead and dive right into After Effects. So how do we bring this in? Well, I'm going to go ahead into my project panel and double click. And in my project panel, I'm going to go ahead and select that rocket scene. Now that I have that rocket scene selected, I don't want to just hit import. If I hit import, it's going to come in as a flattened image and I won't have access to all those layers. Instead, I'm going to change the import as footage to import composition retain layer sizes. Now, I always choose retain layer sizes because that will give each individual layer its own bounding box, the size of that layer. And it makes things a lot easier when you're going to animate as well. So I'm going to go ahead and hit import. And when I hit import, it's going to give me another window that pops up. It's going to, again, remind me if I want it to be a flattened image or if I want it to have the layer sizes, as well as an editable layer styles button. And what this basically is asking is, do you want to keep things like that drop shadow editable, or do you want to merge them and flatten them into footage when you pull in those individual layers? And we're going to keep ours editable as we go. Now, as we hit that, you'll see the rocket scene comes in as its own composition. I'm going to drop that in my comps folder. And I'm going to go ahead and double click that composition to open it so we can see what we have. Now, just like in Photoshop, we have things like the background, the clouds, the different planets. We have the big cloud, which you'll notice that drop shadow did come in. We have the ship, which looks a little different here, which we'll talk about in a second, as well as the shooting stars and whatnot. Now, the ship, if you remember, was actually a folder here. And so anytime you have a folder in Photoshop, it will come in as its own composition. And this is really nice because now, if we want to add some rumble to this or whatnot, we can go into its own composition by double clicking. And now we can still animate that out here as we see fit. We also have the ability to edit that drop shadow. So if I go to the big cloud and I open up my kind of drawer here, you'll see I have a layer styles and it brought over things like the drop shadows. So if I want to play and maybe even animate that opacity, which could be really cool, I could change the different lighting angles. I could change the color of that. I don't know why we'd want red, but maybe we want a little red that actually looks kind of cool. We can go ahead and do that. So again, layers, layer styles, and everything in between will come in as the respective layers. If you have folders, those folders will come in and they will be, again, turned into compositions. Now, how do we do this in Adobe Illustrator? Well, in Adobe Illustrator, we all know Illustrator kind of uses groups with sublayers or subpaths inside of them. So you can see here in this subpath just all these different layers of this vector, this beautiful artwork of these vector clouds, right? All of these different layers show up. And I've gone ahead and separated this file into a few distinct areas. I have my very big background, I have my midground, I have kind of a middle midground, if that makes sense, and then our cabin layer. Now, I don't want every single path to be in its own layer. I do want to group these into one specific path. So just be aware that if you only have one layer in Illustrator, it will not bring over all the things inside the drawer separately. So just be aware of that. So now that we have this, we'll go back to After Effects and we'll double click. And we're going to select the same thing, the AI file, and we're going to do composition retain layer styles. I'm going to hit open and we're going to drop that into the comps folder and double click. Now you want to be aware of file size when it comes to vector, because sometimes when they translate to pixels, they're going to be quite large. But as you can see here, it did bring over every single layer that I see fit. Now, with that said, one common misconception, and I'm going to go ahead and lock everything but the cabin so I can select things easier, is that these automatically will be vector. And I'm going to hit S for scale and just show you something. If I scale this up, you're going to notice this is far from vector. It actually gets a little blurry as you see the edges of this scene. I don't want that to be blurry. The idea of using vector is I have the ability to kind of scan things and make them crisp and sharp. So to do this, when you import, you have one extra step to perform. Next to each layer that you want to be vectorized, there's this For Comp Layer button that has a continuous rasterize button, and it looks like a little starburst or a sunshine. I'm going to go ahead and click that, and you can kind of see, hopefully it sharpens it, and I'm going to drag that on all the other layers as well, just to keep them nice and vector and crisp. And so now, no matter how much I scale in, it's going to be crisp. Now, a lot of people will also make the mistake of going beyond 100%. So if I go to like 200% down here, that's not going to be, it's going to be blurry every single time. That would be like putting your face real close to something. But overall now, this can be scaled. This can be, created into a 3D layer. We could adjust this and use our 3D camera tool as we see fit to kind of pan through this. And this is the easy way to get your layered files, whether you're in Illustrator or whether you're in Photoshop, into Adobe After Effects. And then it's really just about going to town with some of your animation, using some 3D camera work, which we'll discuss in another lesson. Hope you enjoyed this quick tip on how to get your Illustrator and Photoshop files working and in order in Adobe After Effects. Thanks, everyone.